If you don't know what the Tabasco fiasco is, then strap in. This is pretty much a guide on how not to run a race team sponsored by International Sports Management Racing. The team, known as ISM Racing for short, was born because of the large investment by Tabasco Hot Sauce. The fascinating sponsor tapped into NASCAR in 1997 and would be completely out of the sport by 1998. Right before the video starts, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. You guys have been super supportive lately and it really means the world to me. But with that said, let's get straight into the video. In October of 1997, a new team was born, you guessed it, ISM Racing. They had a huge backing from Tabasco, which would explain why the team is also known as Team Tabasco. It was the face of the franchise as soon as the doors opened. However, another face of the franchise would be driver Todd Bodine. Todd was just 33 years old in 1997 with a lot of potential on the table. He had 6 winning seasons in the Busch Series and had come close to the title a few times. Bodine had a decent amount of experience in the Cup Series at this time, with roughly 75 starts and a handful of top 10s. The team's first introduction into the Winston Cup was round 28 of the 1997 season at Charlotte, where Bodine would qualify for the race and finish a very solid 26th place. Unfortunately, the team would fail to qualify for the final race of the season at Atlanta, but that's expected for a new team. The focus for the team was 1998 as they prepared for a full season. In 1997 was more of just getting the toes a little wet and to gain some experience as an organization. Now, Bob Hancher, the car owner, and Todd Bodine were ready for what was to come in the 1998 season. Except they weren't. The team would miss the Daytona 500, their biggest opportunity of the season. Then they'd also miss the shows at Rockingham and Las Vegas the next 2 races. Then came round 4 at Atlanta, and Todd Bodine put the thing on the front row in qualifying. Talk about a turnaround. I mean, this whole situation I'm going to tell you in the next few minutes is quite baffling, but this was very impressive by both Todd and the crew for this team. Despite late race engine issues, Bodine still finished in 10th place and led 46 laps. Incredible. This momentum carried for the next 2 rounds at Bristol and Darlington as they'd make the field and would have 2 top 30 runs, so quite an improvement. Reality set back in when the team would miss 2 of the next 3 races. By round 16, the team only had started 8 races, so it wasn't going according to plan. Luckily, Tabasco was being patient. The sponsor had invested a lot into the sport and was fully embracing it. Their merchandise and diecast cars were a hot commodity, and Todd even had his own cookbook with him. So although the results weren't there, these were just typical growing pains of a new Winston Cup team. Todd was a great driver with great potential, the team had funding, and a committed sponsor. What could go wrong? Well, after Bodine failed to qualify at Sonoma in race 16, car owner Bob Hancher had enough. He dropped Bodine as their driver and stuck Gary Bradbury in the car the next week at Loudon. Gary actually did a great job. He qualified 11th, but the engine let go, resulting in a 40th place finish. Further, this may have been the best thing to happen to Todd as he'd race for Joe Falk for the rest of the 98 season and qualify for every race he attempted. However, this was a horrible decision ultimately by Bob. Tabasco, if you couldn't tell, was a very committed sponsor. They were okay with the poor results in the first half of the year and had committed to Bodine as their driver. They were creating a brand with him and had an apparent great relationship going. What makes this even worse is that Hancher took it into his own hands to fire the driver without consulting Tabasco. He chased results over the solid foundation they had that many other teams of similar size would have died for. With this decision to let Todd go, it started a classic game of musical chairs as it was Loy Allen's turn in the seat for the Firecracker 400. The race was ultimately postponed, so of course he didn't race. Since Bradbury wasn't available the next week at Pocono, Jimmy Horton would step in the seat and didn't qualify. Wally Dallenbeck, who actually raced at Fontana earlier in the season with the team, was offered a 5-race deal with them, but he declined. Despite all of this, Tabasco was still the sponsor of the number 35 for ISM Racing. Without consulting sponsor Tabasco, Bob Hancher would pull off an even bigger stunt next when he sold the car to Tim Beverly. The team, rebranded as Tyler Jet Motorsports, wouldn't skip a beat when they showed up to Indy the very next week after Pocono with driver Darrell Waltrip. What makes this even more interesting is that Darrell had also sold his team to Tim Beverly earlier in the season, so he was sort of driving in his own equipment again. Also, before the Indy race, a crew went to Darrell Waltrip's old shop, which was now Tyler Jet Motorsports shop, and painted the Tabasco scheme over an old Chevrolet. With even another layer of controversy, the Tabasco car had always been run as a Pontiac, but now it was a Chevy. At the racetrack, Tabasco had a merchandise shop set up, with Todd Bodine as the driver and Pontiac as the manufacturer. However, the car that was on track was Darrell Waltrip driving a Monte Carlo for Tyler Jet Motorsports, which was still not yet known to the sponsor. If you could imagine, Tabasco was quite mad when they found out about all that had transpired. However, the committed group stayed with DW after a great 13th place run at Indy. After Watkins Glen the next week, still racing a Chevy, Tabasco wanted to go back to a Pontiac to have at least some continuity. So they ran a Pontiac for the rest of the season. With Darrell Waltrip's championship provisional, the team made every single start for the rest of 1998. With that, the team had last place speed for the majority of the events. In the last 13 rounds, DW only snatched one more top 20 finish for the team. At the conclusion of the season, Darrell Waltrip, Tyler Jet Motorsports, and Tabasco all parted ways. Now, Todd Bodine did an interview on the Scene Vault podcast, and you guys should totally check it out. He said that the root of the problem was crooked car owners. They received $6 million from Tabasco and immediately spent $1 million on a jet. Then they took $2 million and spent it on their IRL team. Now, they could only operate on half of the initial $6 million investment. This was honestly a ton of money to fund one Cup car back then, and they could have actually been very competitive. The crew was obviously committed, and they had a committed and talented driver, and a committed sponsor, and $6 million to fund the team that would have put them in a great position to be competitive. I'm not going to spoil the rest of the interview, as there is a clip of just the Tabasco fiasco conversation on the Scene Vault's YouTube channel, and you should check it out because the insight is really crucial in understanding why the team failed from the inside. Darrell Waltrip would race just 2 more seasons in NASCAR. Tim Beverly sold Tyler Jet Motorsports outright less than 2 years after the 1998 season. Tabasco would leave NASCAR obviously with one of the worst experiences you could have as a committed sponsor. Todd Bodine would end up having a legendary career in the Truck Series. In a lot of these scandals, it's usually sponsors screwing over the team, or if the sponsor is screwed over, they just leave mid-season and it results in a lawsuit. However, the brand Tabasco was trying to create in NASCAR was a failure through no fault of its own, and its short-lived journey will always be remembered as the Tabasco fiasco. Anyways guys, that's it for this video. I hope you did enjoy, and if you did, make sure you leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.